Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining this first innovation webinar organized by Smart2B. My name is Fulvio Bernardini. I am in charge of communication and dissemination activities for the Smart2B project, and today I will act as moderator. I will just spend a few seconds and introduce you to this webinar series that will take place between July 2022 and November 2023. The webinars have multiple goals. First, give visibility to the European Commission initiatives for energy transition. Secondly, deepen the technological challenges related to the concept of smart building. And last but not least, spread information about the results of the Smart2B project, which represents, together with other similar projects funded by the European Commission, a practical answer to the challenges posed by the 2050 Sustainability Roadmap. In today's webinar, we will have the opportunity to explore some very important topics, such as the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, or EPBD, and the Smartness Readiness Indicator, or SRI. We will do it with Simone Alessandri of UBAC and Andrei Litiu of REVA. Following, Nuno Mateus of EDP will introduce the Smart2B project. Given the shortness of the speeches, the Q&A session will take place at the end of the last speech. During the webinar, you are, however, invited to share any questions through the chat icon. I will collect the questions and ask them to the speakers during the Q&A session. I therefore pass the word to the first speaker, Simone Alessandri. Simone is the Deputy Managing Director at UBAC, the European Building Automation and Controls Association, and Managing Director of EU ESCO, the European Association of Energy Service Companies. He will introduce the building automation and control system requirements in the EPBD, sorry. Simone, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. You should be able to see the screen, I hope. So I'm glad to be here today and to guide you through the BAC's requirements in the EPBD. I will move on to the next slide. So in this slide, you can see the members of UBAC. It's just a slide for you to visualize them and to know that we represent the manufacturers of building automation and control systems, both in the residential and non-residential sector. As said, I will guide you through the EPBD. But before and mainly like the most important topic of today will be the revision of the EPBD. I think it's the one that interests most of you. But before going into the revision of the EPBD, I would like to spend some minutes on the current EPBD, which is in theory implemented in the member states. One step back in 2018, the European Commission, the European institutions approved the EPBD, and in this revision, in the last revision, there were a number of BAC's measures for the first time included in this directive. When we saw that these measures were approved, we thought as industry, how can we help? So we developed some documents. You will be able to click on the links here, but you can find them also in the UBAC website. So there are guidelines on the EPBD transposition. But right now, I'd like to spend a minute on the study, which is a weighted strategic efficiency study on the impact of the revision of the EPBD on energy savings from the use of building automation and controls. So the study analyzed 3 different scenarios regarding these BAC's measures. So baseline scenario, a scenario where the EPBD was still remaining the same and without any BAC's measures, a basic implementation of these BAC's measures, as we call them, copy-paste approach, and a proper implementation of these measures. This study, again, which is available and you can look into it, is basically giving results that shows that a proper implementation would deliver savings corresponding to 14% of total building primary energy consumption, 36 billion energy bill savings triggered, and so on. So these are huge numbers that shows that it is worth actually for the member states to implement these measures properly. But what does it mean? I think most of you would ask the question, what's the difference between implementing these measures properly and not implementing them? And what measures are you talking about? In this slide, you will see on the right-hand side of the screen one of the key BAC's measures included in the EPBD. It's in Article 14, 15, paragraph 4 and 5. So this is actually prescribing that for the buildings above 290 kilowatt as an effective rated output, both existing and new, they will have to be equipped by certain BACS capabilities. For the new buildings, that starts immediately at the moment where this was implemented. And for the existing buildings, all existing buildings by 2025, meaning 31st December 2024, they will have to be equipped with these capabilities. So it's quite a challenge. And especially it is a challenge also for many actors involved in the process to understand what these requirements actually mean. Because when you look at the second part of the article, it says that the building automation and control system shall be capable of, and then there are a list of capabilities such as continuously monitoring, benchmarking the building's energy efficiency, detecting losses in the efficiency of technical building systems, and so on. So these are really important capabilities, but they are only defined with words. There is no reference to labels or standards in the European directive. So since this applies also to existing buildings, since after 31st December 2024, all buildings in scope will have to be equipped with these capabilities, it is key for all the players to understand what this really means in practice. So one of the differences between a copy-paste approach and a proper implementation is that these capabilities are linked to a specific standard. So in this regard, in certain countries, such as Portugal, for example, there is a reference to a standard, which is EN 15232, or was EN 15232, because now this standard has been replaced by EN ISO 52120. So this is the reference standard when it comes to building automation, and Class A and B can fulfill these requirements. So it would be relatively easy for member states to write in the text that Class A and B of the standard are okay, while the lower classes are not. This would be a reference that would be, I think, much appreciated and will introduce clarity for all the professionals involved. One of the other elements will be where technically and economically feasible. So it's normal that in the directive, certain things are not really defined or precisely, because this is left for the member states. But it is for sure important that the member states actually link these economic feasibility to certain parameters. Again, as an example, France. So France basically writes that it is always considered feasible when the payback time is less than 6 years. So this is not happening in all member states, and this is the suggestion that we give to all the member states in order to implement this properly. As an association, we were contacted by certain member states because in certain cases, for example, the member states were not able to refer to the standards, and they needed more explanation about what these capabilities means for the professionals. Furthermore, since the existing buildings are in scope as well, after 2025, there should be a compliance check. So for all the buildings in scope, there could be compliance checks. So we developed a document, which is actually a package of different documents. It's available and usable for free. You can find it again in our website, and you will find links. It is available in English, it is available in German, and it will soon be available in French. So it's a checklist. So basically, we through a task force of experts, we developed it. You can use it. You can. It can be the basis for the member states to develop something at national level. And there are self-declaration compliance questions or checklist compliance questions, compliance supporting records, verification checks, and so on. So for each of the capabilities that you saw in the previous slides, there are much more explanations of what this means in practice for their all systems. You will find also a guidance in the package, and you will find a form for a self-declaration. The target users are building inspectors, owners, designers, and national policymakers for them to understand a bit better what these capabilities, what these requirements means in practice. That being said, we can look at the new EPBD. This is just very quickly for you to understand where we are. The new EPBD revision was proposed by the Commission in December last year. We are now in a very important phase where the Parliament is taking its position. The Council representing the Member States is discussing its position as well, and the Commission is also helping the other two institutions talking to each other and finally reach a compromise. So the process will be probably over by the end of the year. This is the goal for the institutions. And as an estimation, as a speculation, the requirements could be enforced at the end of 2024, for example, Q3 2024. On the lower side of the screen, you see what we're doing as an association in order to provide suggestions and the activities that we are actually doing right now. Among the activities, we provide suggestions, and this is what I'm going to tell you in the next minutes, in the next slides. So now we are looking at the new EPBD, how it will look like. So we already know what's in the Commission's proposal. We already know what's going on in the European Parliament. So the requirement that you saw before regarding those BACS capabilities becoming mandatory, probably the threshold is will go down to 70 kilowatts. So more and more buildings will be in scope of these requirements, while the bigger buildings will be fulfilling these requirements by 31st December 2024. The ones between 70 and 290 kilowatt will be equipped by these capabilities by the 31st December 2029. So more time. Of course, the date can still change as a result of the political negotiations. There are some certain changes in terms of which is the article where these requirements will be. Those parameters for economic feasibility, there should be, even at EU level, much more commitment for the member states to identify, frame, and justify these parameters at national level. The checklist that I showed you, it could be the checklist, this checklist, another checklist could be helpful, useful. So even in the directive, this can become a reference. There is this new standard, EN ISO 52120, which will replace EN 15232. And this will probably be one of the standards that will be in scope of the national calculation methodologies. Finally, energy performance certificates. So the energy performance certificates will be reviewed. There will be new measures on this with new indicators, and these could be actually tools that could be useful to check the compliance. So there could be, when the assessor comes in to have the EPC, also an indication in the EPC whether you are complying with these requirements or not. I'll try to speed up. BACS capabilities in residential. For the first time with this revision, there will probably be measures in the residential sector. So as of today, these are only voluntary, while there are mandatory requirements in the non-residential. Now, we successfully advocated through these years to have a first step in this regard, and we were happy to see that the Commission included the wording shall, so there will be actually mandatory requirements. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the text proposed by the Commission, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you see what we are suggesting right now as UBAC as further amendments. Actually, what's important to know is that, I mean, I will not go into the political game, but it's important for you to know that there will be, for new buildings, probably only for new buildings and those undergoing major renovation, initial requirements for building automation capabilities. Still to be defined the wording of what these capabilities will be, but there will be requirements. A smart readiness indicator, I know Andre will talk about it. The important things for you to keep is that this can become mandatory. It's a possibility. It could become mandatory for certain buildings by certain dates. So we believe that for the buildings that are equipped with building automation and control systems, they should also have a mandatory SRI to speed up the deployment and implementation of this SRI. So with the same threshold that we have for BACS. Final two slides. Indoor environmental quality. Through these 2 years and more of pandemic, we realized how important it is, the indoor environmental quality. And we believe a first step should be taken in this regard by the new EPBD. So probably, I mean, it will be too much to ask for thresholds at national level regarding certain parameters, but regarding a set of parameters, what could be done is that in certain buildings, there could be a monitoring, evaluation, and reporting of these parameters. So these values should be visible to the occupants, and there should be also information about deviations between actual and target values. I will not spend too much time explaining how this is actually easy to be done because of consistency with the certain digital requirements, but you will see CO2, relative humidity, temperature, and so on. These are really important indicators, and it's important to create awareness on these ones. Finally, last slide, hydronic balancing. Even this one is really a fundamental technology that at the moment is missing in the EU directive, is missing in the member states regulations. We have developed, we published actually a document, a white paper on this topic. 95% of buildings in Europe are lacking dynamic hydronic balancing. We have a suggestion that was actually tabled by many MEPs right now, and we are confident that we will see an improvement in the new EPBD revision. So what could actually be in the next EPBD revisions is that new buildings could be equipped with the dynamic balancing at the relevant zone level, and for existing buildings, these could be equipped with dynamic balancing when replacing heat or cold generators. This was the last slide. Obviously, I'm open and happy to take questions in case.
Thank you, Simone. And of course, as already Simone said, any questions you can put them inside the chat. Now it's time for Andrei Litiu to introduce the SRI and the UCERT project. Andrei is a building performance advisor at REVA, the Federation of European Heating, Ventilation and Air Conditioning Associations, and executive director of EPD Center, and conducts in parallel applied research on human behavior and smart buildings. Please, Andrei.
Thank you, Fulvio. Thank you, Nuno, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. So my challenge today is to connect the dots when it comes to smart buildings on policy, standardization, digital tools, and training. Let's see how I can manage that. And this is on the basis of the UCERT project, but I'll start with some linking that's needed to make the transition from Simone's presentation further in detail with the SRI. And I think this will create the natural flow towards the activities that the Smart2B team are conducting in the project. I have most of the time two hats on. If we are not connected already on social media, please let's do so. I look forward to further exploring synergies, as that's often the case. Just to remember or to remind ourselves, why are we in this evolution process of making our buildings smarter and smarter, and actually digitalizing and digitally transforming our society, is that we want to be in control. We want to make the invisible visible. And this has been going, this process, for many centuries now. And specifically when it comes to building performance, irrespective if it's energy, environmental, indoor environmental quality, we need to measure. And this is completely linked to one of the last slides of Simone, that we need to measure otherwise and monitor, otherwise we cannot improve it. And the next step is to control it. Making the link between the box requirements and SRI, this is my personal point of view that the box requirements in the EPBD and the SRI, which is also stemming from the EPBD, have a synergetic relationship the same way that the Eco-Design Framework Directive has with the Energy Labeling Framework Directive, meaning that the eco-design requirements are the push and then the energy labeling regulations are the pull. I see this completely the same when it comes to the BACS requirements. The BACS requirements are the push, and of course the SRI is the pull. And I don't think we need to discuss anymore or convince anybody about the added value of having a BACS system, IoT, and so on, digitally transforming our buildings. We are way beyond that point. The work is ongoing on the SRI. I'm sure most of you are aware or deeply involved. There is an official website where you can follow everything. You can subscribe to a newsletter. The SRI support team is preparing fact sheets on the SRI as a whole and also on specific aspects of the SRI, like the ventilation that was published recently. I know there is already work going on the cooling side of the SRI assessment. I just want to stop for a bit on the SRI overall. I see this assessment tool as the first horizontal assessment that covers several aspects within one process. So it looks at the energy use of the building, it looks at the relationship between the building and the energy systems, and it also takes into account the people. So from my point of view, that's why building automation control systems and also the SRI are very horizontal and linked to this digitalization and digital transformation, because basically they encompass everything that has to do with building performance. So we monitor, we control, and then we improve. Then again, we should always remember we have a lot of technology available today. Some of it is being taken to the next step, like in Smart2B project. Still, we should always remember we are doing this for a purpose. So we are not making buildings smart for the sake of having them smart. We are doing it for a purpose. And as you can see here, the main purpose, as we all know, is to improve the building stock within these all criteria. Make it healthy, make it flexible, make it smart, make it resilient, safe, sustainable, and so on. Now, a few words about UCERT, very brief. In UCERT, we are working on the evolution process of energy performance certification assessment processes and certification schemes. And we have a very specific recipe that we believe the next generation EPCs should put in place, not only at EU level, but to have it transposed at national level, to support the EPBD's implementation and monitoring. That's the part, I think, the soft spot that should be better looked at in the coming years. And we do this by looking on the ways to apply the EPB standards, which are slowly becoming at global level the energy performance assessment methodology in a flexible way. Member states will always have flexible choices because the national situation is always different from country to country, but still within a coherence framework. The SRI, indoor environmental quality, just 2 indicators that should be included in the EPCs, and additional other indicators on costs, on actual energy performance to also reduce the performance gap and not only look at this asset rating, but go to measured building performance and operate the added value to the users, to the end users also. And all this is with the scope to make the EPCs a more user-friendly tool, a tool that can support not only decision-making for a building owner on its own, but also the interaction between the decision makers that are laypersons and the building performance professionals, which are the experts and can provide advice. We have a doctor for our bodies, we have a mechanic for our cars. However, most often we don't have a coach for our buildings to ensure they perform better, especially in the residential. In non-residential, you have building operators, usually. These are the 3 transition pathways that we imagine. I'll not read them from the slides. You have links behind all the images in my slide deck, and I'm sure you will receive the PDF version so you can access them and go in further depth. And this is a point I want to make on purpose. So if we have more smart technology in buildings, we will have a better SRI. So that will be reflected in the value of the building. But then also concretely, just to give an example, by installing additional functionalities in the smart technologies in a building, you can add to asset rating, which is just based on assumptions, which is commonly the practice in energy performance certification schemes. You can go to measured building performance and to operational rating. So this is just an example, and this would ensure that the building actually performs as it was intended, and you can easily spot anything that's not going according to the original plan. This is just one example, and you can even split it if you just want to start with indoor environmental quality for the buildings that don't have all the technical building systems in place. Then you can raise awareness and make the invisible visible and show how added value could be brought with a ventilation system, with a cooling system, etc., etc. We are developing also for the SRI, but for the other indicators, digital tools that are bringing Excel spreadsheets in a web browser environment. And I kindly invite all of you to check the Smart Build for EU project. This is an EU-funded project that brings together all the innovation projects working on smart buildings and dealing also with the SRI. And here you can find more details about our digital tool. Just a promotion we had last week, the final UCERT final conference, with our sister project Extendo. You have the links here if you want to check in more details what we are doing. This was the lineup in the morning, a very interesting debate on the ongoing EPBD revision. And we are not alone. We are going farther together as opposed to fast alone. This is the family of next-gen EPC projects, and 2 additional ones are starting this year. And on the SRI, we had an event last year. You can check the recording. There's a link behind the image on the left. And this year, we are going again to sustainable places. And the topic will be measured building performance and operational rating, how to arrive at a convergent calculation methodology, because again, there are many, many different ways of doing it. In UCERT, we will have also national events in national language. You can see here the countries that we cover, so be prepared in autumn. We have these type of events. And to be in tune, you can follow each of these social media or newsletters, whatever is more convenient for you to be in touch with us and to follow the UCERT developments. We also have a Riva Knowledge Hub where building professionals can stay up to date. We do some policy tracking. We have an academy for technical content and also an HVAC terminology. I stop here. As I said, let's connect and explore further synergies in our activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Andrei. The last speaker, Nuno Mateus, will introduce the Smart2B project, its goals and challenges. Nuno is a project manager at EDP. He owns a Master in Engineering of Energy and Environment and a PhD in Energy and Sustainable Development. He coordinates the Smart2B project. Please, Nuno.
Thank you, Fulvio. Thank you, Simone and Andrei, for your good presentation and introduction to Smart2B project. So I'm really pleased to be here today to present you the Smart2B project. So I will begin just to quick key facts about the project. So EDP is the project coordinator, and the project just starts on last September. And we have around 4 million euros just to reach the proposed objectives that I will explain you further ahead. And we have 11 partners from 8 diverse countries that also comprise 5 different pilots. So since Andrei and Simone already make a good introduction, I will try to be quick. So I think you are already aware of the EU building stock status. That is the main motivation to this Smart2B concept. So since this is a energy intensive sector and presents low levels of smartness, there are a huge potential there to improve these buildings in this sector. So of course in Smart2B we want to be part of the energy transition, and for that of course we need to monitor and to control the buildings in order to upgrade the smartness levels, to upgrade the energy use of the buildings, and of course to reduce the energy and the CO2 emissions. And for that, we will try to deploy IoT and ICT devices in the buildings and provide the buildings two-way communication, and not only receiving feedback from the users, but also try to enable capabilities to request feedback from the users and also to receive some requests also from the grid operators. In Smart2B, we have three main domains where we hope to have huge impacts. So the first one is related to what I explained before, with all the technology developments that we hope to achieve in Smart2B, related with ICT, IoT, and the Internet of Things, that I will explain the whole ecosystem that we hope to develop in the project. But with that, we hope to achieve big objectives in terms of the increase of energy efficiency, unlocking the building's flexibility potential, and of course the major goal of the project, that is upgrading the smartness of the existing buildings. Aligned to that, of course, and as a consequence to decrease the energy consumption, increase the energy efficiency, and so on, we have these environmental impacts related with the reduction of CO2 emissions that are also aligned with the EU objectives for carbon neutrality. And final, in Smart2B, you hope to also develop a platform that will help and engage the users to create and promote the energy communities. And for that, you hope to develop an app, a platform where we can engage and empower users and to make them an active player in this energy transition. Now I will try to give you an overview about what we aim to develop in the project. We have four main layers in the project, or at least we hope to develop these four main layers. The first one that consists in Smart2B devices. We want to improve the smartness of the building. So for that, we hope to develop IoT interface and gateways that could be connected to legacy equipments and help us to improve the smartness of the buildings. And for that, in the project, we have two approach, one for residential and another one for non-residential. They are similar. And just to give you a quick overview about that, the idea is to monitor and control the energy consumption of the buildings through the installation of smart plugs, solar plugs, meters, actuators that allow us not only to monitor, but also to actuate in some of the devices that could be controlled. Now moving to our platform that will act as a middle layer between our device layer, but also to our service layer. This platform will be the gathering point of all the data that we are measuring in the pilots, but also we'll have some knowledge extraction and control capabilities there, and we'll make the connection to the service layer. That will be the third layer that I will try to explain right now, where we aim to develop AI and some machine learning algorithms in order to provide energy and non-energy related services. And these services that we hope to develop in the future are directly connected to the SRI methodology that Andre refers previously. So we are targeting to develop 9 main services in the project. And the main functionalities that we hope to develop are basically the first ones are related directly with energy. So in order to optimize the energy consumption costs of the buildings. Then we'll have a smart performance assessment and advisor that is directly linked to each SRI criteria. So we'll have some advice to the users and consumers about how to use some equipments, how to act in their own buildings in order to improve the energy efficiency, but also at the same time to also improve the indoor air comfort and quality. And then we'll have a flexibility service that will determine the building's potential in terms of flexibility that could be used in a future flexibility markets as an aggregator of flexibility. Then we'll have indoor air comfort and air quality that's depending from users' feedback and preferences is provided through the control of the HVAC system mainly. And finally, we'll have predictive maintenance and degradation assessment that will allow us to give the advice related with the maintenance of the equipments that we are monitoring. Now, finally, we enter in the last layer of Smart2B. That will be the layer that will make the bridge between the users and Smart2B platform. And in this layer, we hope to develop a user interface. This is just a screenshot of some of the developments that we have made until now. So the idea is to develop three main modules there. The first one that presents the dashboards, where we include all the information about the energy consumption, production, and flexibility that we are monitoring in the buildings. Then we have a model where the users could give us feedback about their thermal preferences in terms of usage of equipment and so on. So we can know about what kind of equipments we can control or not. And finally, we have a gamification component that will try to deal with the lack of engagement from the users in this kind of apps. And with that, we'll try to make a competition between the users and try to understand if it works or not. So just reaching the final slides of my presentation, I would like also to present you the Smart2B pilots. So we have 5 pilots, like I explained before. And the first one is in Lisbon, Portugal. It's a Lisboa Airbnb building. It's a building comprising 5 apartments. And the idea here is to mainly show that Smart2B system platform could be used by the Airbnb owners to control and manage all the building and the users that are there. Then also in Lisbon, we have another pilot that is Lisboa Social Community. Here, this pilot is comprised by 9 buildings and comprises essentially young adults, mixed houses, and foster homes from Santa Casa Misericórdia, one of our partners. And the main objective here, besides deploying all the Smart2B ecosystem in the building, is also to develop a sustainability program to educate and inform young people there. Then we move to our final residential pilot, that is Albertslund Retirement Home in Denmark, where we have a retirement home where we hope to integrate the existing BMS system and deploy the Smart2B device to control and monitor the appliances in 30 residential apartments. And we move to Stockholm in Sweden, where we have our first non-residential pilot, Citycom's Jakobsberg Centrum, where the idea here is to integrate also the existing BMS system and use our platform to monitor and control the common areas of the Centrum. And finally, we arrive to Spain, to Alcantarilla, where we have a big office building where the main objective is also the same: deploy the Smart2B devices and test all the functionalities. I just want to refer that in the non-residential buildings and also in Albertslund, we'll have PV systems and also EV chargers that could be also monitored and controlled by the system. And just to finalize this presentation with what I think we should achieve in the end of the project, that is the Smart2B ecosystem. I want to highlight that I think that the success of this project could be also related about the approach that we are using since the proposal stage, where it's really focused on the user needs and requirements, and we are using that in every steps of the project. And with that, we hope to achieve the Smart2B ecosystem that could be used by everyone. So thank you all. If you have any question.
Yeah, they can be written inside the the chat, as we said before. Thanks, Nuno. We can start now the Q&A session, I guess, and we can proceed with the first questions that we received. First of all, we've been asked if the presentations will be available after the webinar. The answer is yes. They will be sent to the participants as a follow-up to the webinar. Secondly, we have another question. This is directed to Simone, and the question is, what is the most important measure or the top 3 measures that must be inserted into the future recast of EPBD?
Thanks, Fulvio. Thanks for the question. I think so I'll try to tell you 3 priorities, even if in our suggestions we have kind of 17 pages, so there are quite many things to be addressed. So the first one I would say is take care of the basics. So there are certain technologies, as I mentioned before. One of them is hydronic balancing, which are quite again basics in terms of, I mean, even initial cost. They're pretty the cost is relatively low. They can achieve quite a lot of savings. They can improve the comfort. So self-regulating devices and hydronic balancing on these 2 measures, there should be requirements so that in the next years these 2 technologies will be deployed at EU level. Second measure, I would say that extension of the scope of BECS requirements. So at the moment, as I said, effective rated output is more than 290 kilowatt, and it's only for non-residential. So I think it would be really important to make sure that these capabilities, which are really essential, will be present by 2030 in medium size and large non-residential buildings, including the existing one. This is really important. I mean, let's not forget that this EPBD revision is also the result of the renovation wave. So at EU level, we know that only 1% of the building stock is being renovated each year, and this needs to at least double if we want to reach the EU goals. So really important to make sure that even the existing buildings, they have these capabilities installed. And to start also with residential, because I think even the buildings in the residential at the moment, there are little requirements compared to the commercial ones, and it's important if we want the whole EU building stock to achieve the EU climate goals to target them as well. The third one is the smart readiness indicator. I think Andre was right, and I couldn't agree more with him when he was explaining this push and pull mechanism. And I think in terms of the smart readiness indicator, it is important again that the legislation sets it as a mandatory requirement in certain buildings, but also that a link with the energy performance certificate is established. That even the other tools are digital. Digital building logbooks are important. So I think digitalization throughout the whole directive is more and more important, and we should put the occupants of the buildings, the owners of the buildings, in a situation where it will not be too much of a burden for them to have a lot of different assessments and a lot of different tools. All these tools should be, talk to each other, should be integrated, and should be digital.
Thanks, Simone. We have another question. This one, I would say it's addressed again to you, Simone, and also to Nuno. How can future recasts of the EPBD contribute to the large-scale deployment of integrated BECS systems such as Smart2Bs?
Let's start, Fulvio, or?
Oh, it's really, I guess, really up to you.
Okay. Well, to me, really, like these BECS requirements and the SRI are the two key things, because the with this, if these BECS requirements are properly implemented, it means that in the end, the owners will have to look at the solutions that are available on the market. And I think these systems that are an object of the project are really having all those capabilities at a first glance. So I think, and they could probably even go beyond those capabilities. Therefore, I mean, basically through the legislation, you will basically tell the owners that they need to have these, and when they do an intervention, they will for sure look into something that is increasing the value of the building, and at the same time improving their comfort and reducing the cost and so on. So I think this will be essential. The moment more people, more owners will look into this, the moment these systems will be available, for sure they will be more successful. And smart readiness indicator, if it's true that there will be this indicator with a score based on all these capabilities, for sure integrated systems like this one could deliver potentially higher scores and could become more interesting, because again they will give a higher value to the building through the score.
Nuno, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I can just compliment Simon, because I totally agree with you, and my previous experience in the disposition of the last EPBD for Portugal told me that you are right. So I would suggest that first we need to insert new obligations to the buildings. Only after that, and persons know the implications and the real effects, or the added value of the back systems, only after that they understand that could bring other good things, namely the added buildings market value, for example, like Simone said, but there are several others like indoor thermal comfort and so on. So I think this is the way.
Okay, thanks, Nuno. We have also a question for Andrei. In your opinion, which are the main SRI value propositions for the common building owner user?
Yes, thank you. So as I said in the beginning of my presentation, the SRI makes the invisible visible. So before the SRI, there were some scarce assessment methodologies for smartness of buildings, but none of them that was comprehensive as the SRI, that looked at the energy performance of the building, how it relates to the energy system and the people. They were just looking maybe on the flexibility side, so the relation with the energy system, or maybe just the performance side. And with this invisible made visible, basically exactly what Nuno just said now, some aspects that were before in the category of knowledge, that things you don't know, become something relevant and bring added value in the decision-making process. However, it doesn't mean that you need to have a high SRI score just for having an SRI score. This would have a positive impact on the value of the building, of course. And of course, this would allow the financing sector to tailor the mobilization of capital to put it in this evolution of buildings towards more smartness. That's one thing. But all the functionalities deliver something in practice when it comes to monitoring energy use, indoor environmental quality, or controlling your conditions internally, or just having the insights to further improve. So I think these are the first entry points, I would say, in terms of value proposition. And I could go in more depth, but time is short, so I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. We have another question. This could be addressed to all the speakers, and the question is, how do you see the SRI can be maintained in a long term for European member states? Do you think that a common approach is important?
I don't know if I could start, if I may. So I'll, as I said in my brief presentation of myself, I said to connect. You saw I'm also wearing the EPB Center hat on. So in terms of building performance calculation methodologies, went through this process in the last 20 years, that we started from national calculation methodologies and slowly recognized that it would be much better in terms of quality and also fastness of processes if we would have something more common that would ensure coherence. However, it's clear by now that harmonization is not necessarily feasible. Convergence, on the other hand, is feasible. And this is, I think, where the SRI started in a more positive note with an EU-level methodology, which then, of course, it needs to be tailored to a certain extent to the national situation. But with this digital aspect, this can be done very easily. So if you have a building in country, let's say in Portugal, and another building in Belgium, for example, there would be slight differences in the methodology, but since everything would be stored somehow in a database digitally, you would just click a button and you could move that building in Belgium from Portugal and the other way around. Or you could bring both of them to the EU level methodology so you can compare. And why this is relevant and important, it's because we need to make these changes and transition as fast as possible. It's clear now we are way behind discussions we should be implementing. And if we still keep this fragmented approach, the building sector is already fragmented as is. But if we keep these approaches, this would make it very hard for financing sector and for the building technology industry to deploy all the technology that's needed. And it would also create issues in terms of training and upskilling professionals. So having this convergent approach where national member states are still entitled to make their flexibility choices, as it is already in the set of EPB standards, which is stemming from EPBD, I think it's, in my opinion, the only way we can actually achieve all of our goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrei. And again, another question for you, Andrei. If two different buildings are located in different geographical areas, they will face different climate weather adversities. Is this taken into consideration when grading a building? For example, can a building in harsh climate achieve an A rank as easily as in the mild climates?
Yes, I already briefly touched upon this aspect of methodologies in terms of different geographical areas or building traditions. And I think if the EU level methodology is followed, and there are certain elements that the member states can still decide, as I said, based on weather conditions, based on building traditions, because things are different. If I just take one maybe silly example, the length of the showers that people take in different countries is very much varying. Also, the temperature of the water they use to shower, etc., etc. And this is just a very simplistic example that we can all relate to as we wash our bodies daily. So if you would follow this approach, then you would prevent this, let's say, false competition, if you wanted, that you could cheat in the SRI score, because overall you would have the same framework, which would be adapted to the national conditions. And of course, in the national level, you have regions that could even have further differences, because that's the case, I think, in all EU member states, especially in the bigger ones.
Thank you. So, question for Nuno regarding the Smart2B project. How easily can the Smart2B system be applied to an existing building? And after the end of the project, how do you see the replication in other types of buildings and or countries?
So thanks, Fulvio, for the question. I think somehow I already explained how it can be possible during my presentation, but I will try to reinforce that. So as I said before, the main objective of the project is to upgrade the smartest of existing buildings. So we are dealing about integrate ICT, IoT in existing buildings, in legacy equipments. There are no smartness there. So we are trying to make solutions and develop solutions that could fit in all the building. And that's also why we have an approach for residential buildings and a different approach for non-residential buildings, because the needs are different, of course. So we are trying to develop a solution that fits all in the end. And I think that in the end, the climate will not be, or climate or the type of building do these characteristics that we are trying to predict since the beginning. Will not have a problem in the end. I think the main question when we are developing these kind of systems are not mainly in the buildings or in the climates, but in the users. If you develop the system for the users, they should be adapted wherever you install it. So at least in Smart2B, I try to push on this user-centric approach in order to avoid that problems in the future.
Yeah, so maybe that leads to have a little bit of focus again, maybe on the user interaction or the human interaction in Smart2B.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of the most relevant things. That's why we also have this platform that we are developing, and I think probably one thing that some of you probably do not believe, that is the gamification component. We are testing it. Probably we don't know if it will be successful, but I think if we find a solution that could deal with the lack of engagement of the users after that initial peak of usage, I think is one additional value for our platform for sure. Because if you see nowadays, you could have some smart home systems that have dashboards and so on, but do not have this connection to the users, do not request feedback, and do not try to have this interactive game that we are trying to put in place. So I would say that is a different thing that will differentiate Smart2B from other smart systems that are already in place.
Thank you, Nuno. Okay, our time is off. It's 5 o'clock, and
I think we have just one additional question on the chat. Maybe we can go there.
No, I think we went through all of them, no?
It's from Yakovos.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I saw it. I could quickly address it. Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, I wanted to make this point at a certain moment, so here it is. There is an overlap, not only as it's asked, how does the SRI assessment relate to the EPC assessment, but there is also an overlap with the BACS requirements assessment. So in terms of process, I personally think now it's the moment in time that there needs to be this identification that you can do in one go an EPC for a building. You would have the SRI because there is an overlap, so only slight additional input is required, and also the BACS requirements. And you could also design the training scheme to deliver this upskilling in one go. And this would be really effective from every point of view. So that's something I've been saying now for a while. I hope the Commission will take this into account. Let's see how things evolve. And in terms of relation of assessment output, so the SRI for the time being, and I think it will stay like that, is a qualitative assessment. So it just assesses the availability of certain functionality levels for the different domains in a building. However, it enables the introduction of measured building performance and operational rating indicators in the EPC. So there is this tandem, and I think they are intrinsically linked, and this should be reflected in the EPBD that will come into being. And maybe a question to you, Nuno, if we could still allocate 2 minutes. I was curious if you made the exercise to calculate the SRI for your case studies with the buildings as such, and then what would be the SRI score after the Smart2B systems are put in place? That was a personal technical curiosity.
Yeah, and it's a good question, Andrei. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's one of the tasks that we have going on right now, because how we could measure the upgrade in terms of smartness of the pilots that we have. So the idea here is just to set the initial stage in terms of SRI level before the deployment of Smart2B devices. And in the end, return there and try to measure and calculate it again. So we do not have yet the level, but the majority of our buildings have low levels of SRI. So only the retirement home in Denmark and also the shopping mall have BMS. All the other systems do not have any fancy controlling system. So that's why we believe we can increase the smartness until 90%. So that's it, Andre, but we keep in touch for sure, because we'll have news in the following months regarding this SRI assessment.
Thank you. So thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the participants. There will be a follow-up email in which we'll be sending you a small questionnaire to assess your experience with the Smart2B Innovation Webinar, and so you will know from us very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.